Welcome, everyone, to Mary Giuliani Live. I am so thrilled you're here tonight. We have the first show that I've ever done on sexuality or wellness sexuality, so I'm really excited about that. That's always a fun topic. I've got Linda Landon in the virtual green room, so be sure to stand by. But in the meantime, I just want to make sure everybody knows really the whole purpose of this show, and that is to empower everybody that's watching, including the guests and myself, to really live authentic lives and go for what they really want in their lives and stretch out beyond their comfort zones. And so by watching other people doing that, that's how it's really helped me do that for myself. So that's why I love having guests like Linda and so many of my other guests that have been on the show. So if you are not on my email list, you got to get on my email list. All you got to do is go right up to my website, marygiuliani.net, and there's a Get Show Updates tab where you can sign up on the email list. And I'll even send you links for previous shows, audio or video format, so you can always keep up on what's going on. So there's amazing guests on this show. You've got to hear these stories. They'll totally inspire you. Also, if you are an iTunes person, you can get the show automatically downloaded into your iPhone by subscribing to Mary Giuliani Live on iTunes. So just go on over there to iTunes and get it automatically set up, and you're all set and ready to go there. Let's see, what else? Well, gosh, you know, I have been, like I said, doing this show, about 8 months now, and I just had never come across a person that's, you know, a wellness sexuality practitioner that I thought would be really fun to interview until I met Linda. And so we were talking, and she does many things, and this happens to be one of her specialties. And so I thought, wouldn't it be great to have her on the show, because there's so much stuff around sex in our culture and religion and everything else. And so just a little background on Linda. She's actually an International Coach Federation credentialed business and life coach, as well as a wellness sexuality coach and the creator of the wellness sexuality practice. And so I am so thrilled that we get to bring her on, because we all need a lot of help in this arena, because there's so many strange and different sort of perceptions about sexuality, and I'm really happy to have Linda here to kind of enlighten us about it. So without further ado, let's welcome Linda Landon. Hey, Linda.
Hi, Mary.
So good to see you. By the way, we did not plan on both wearing red. We just happened to wear red.
Red for passion, right?
Yeah, it's so perfect. So like I normally do, I always love to kind of get a feel for what even brought you, what made you drawn to coaching or getting into the world of wellness sexuality, and, you know, how did it all start for you?
Well, everything that I bring through to the people I work with and my friends is something that I've experienced for myself. So I have a story. Like, sexuality is not something that I was born feeling really comfortable about, or actually probably was very comfortable when I was born, and then through all this conditioning that happened with my family and all that stuff that happens to many of us, I got really shut down around sex. And what I discovered was that I really enjoy the seduction, the getting close to someone, the moving into turn on. But when it actually came to having sex and any kind of penetration sex, my vagina would just like shut down, and everything would just turn off. No juice, nothing. So up through my 20s, I thought I was frigid. I really thought I had a problem, and all my lovers thought I had a problem. And then I met a woman, and I fell in love with a woman, and it was much more fun with a woman. I was a lot freer. All my juices were flowing. I realized there was nothing wrong with me. But, you know, even with those women, there was a way that I was in control, and I wasn't surrendering to this deeper level of connection and potential that I knew was inside of me. So I took a hiatus from sex and from relationship. But, you know, I'm an experiencer. So in that period of time, I started to try on things. Like, I explored Tantra, and I discovered this thing called orgasmic meditation. And something in me turned on like it never had before.
Wow.
And discovered that there's this flow of orgasmic energy that runs through our bodies from head to toe that most women know about, but I learned how to really drop into it.
Wow.
And then when I started having sex again, no more tightness, no more contraction. It's like everything opened. And now, I'm a 64-year-old woman, way past menopause, and sex is fabulous. So I took all of this that I learned and folded it into something that I could offer others.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
What a story in that. And so did you actually do the research through just finding individual practitioners to work with, or going to different, trainings, or how did you pull it all together?
All of it. I went to trainings, and I go to a lot of trainings where you would pair up and you would do kind of PT-13 things. But I also went into trainings where it was pretty, I was a single woman, but I would go with it. And so, I'm an adventurer. I try things. So, yeah, I tried a lot of things.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And so for you, when you were working with clients, what would you say is the most common struggle that either couples or single people have around sex in their life, like in terms of what they'd like to see better or different?
Okay. Before I answer that, I also want to go back and say I did get some actual official training in this too. I've got a lot of training and a lot of experience. So a big piece, the biggest piece that happens is couples come to see me who, for the most part, have been together for a while, and they've lost the spark. They've lost the juice, that zing that they had in the beginning. They're really emotionally connected,
Yes.
but they have busy lives. Maybe they have children, and they don't
Right.
have time to just be together. And the sex just sort of becomes like a obligatory,
One more
thing
thing
that
to
gets
do on the
spaced
to-do
out.
list. Yeah.
Exactly.
Why do you,
And I also
oh, I'm sorry. I mean,
I'm going to give you one other, sorry.
go ahead. No, please, no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
So one other kind of situation that's really common is that I will get clients who are like me. Like I get a lot of women who admit, maybe not in the first session, but over time, that they don't enjoy any kind of penetration. And gay or straight, and there's a term, it's called vaginismus, and people
Yes.
get diagnosed with it, and the doctors say it's lubricant. It's like, no. So I've had a lot of success with women who have contraction in their vaginal walls, and they've learned through this process to just let go and relax and enjoy.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really amazing. And so then there's the issue of time, of, people saying they don't have time. You're a coach, you've been on the spiritual path for 30 years. You know that there's a lot underneath that. So where would you go with that if a couple came to you and said, we just don't have time?
Well, I have a great answer for that, and it's not deep. It's
Okay.
like, well, do you have 20 minutes once a week?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this practice that I've developed, there's different levels, but each level can be done in a 20-minute segment.
Yeah.
So do you have time for 20 minutes? And,
Wow.
it's hard for them to say no to that.
Well,
And then what happens? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is that when they start to do this and pleasure starts to come back into their connection, then maybe they have time for more than 20 minutes.
Right. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
is your philosophy or your program, in the stuff that I read about and that we spoke about earlier, it seethis like you use a lot of sort of Eastern traditions of helping people move their sexual energy throughout their body, and just the touch and this, just the really somatic aspects of it. So could you go into a little bit more detail on really how you work on a whole body, mind, spirit level?
Totally. Shall I tell you like the levels and then
Sure.
weave it in that way? Okay, so it is a somatically based practice, but as you know, and I'm sure many of your listeners know, that our bodies and our minds and our spirits and our emotions are all interwoven. There's no separation.
Right.
So this practice may begin at a somatic level, but it brings in connection, communication, love, all of that. So it starts very simple and very PG-13. Level 1 can be done, a couple can do it together, or one person who just wants to open up this energy in themselves can do it alone. So level 1 is a somatic practice where you're just being guided by me into experiencing sensation in your body, just sitting on the chair, the sense of touch, the air on your skin, and so on. Very, very simple. No sex, no sexual contact.
Just getting in touch with what it feels like to live in your body.
Exactly. And then level 2 is sort of blended, where I teach people a way of communicating to me or to a partner in a very simple sensation-based way that is easily understood. So they learn how to communicate what they're feeling in their bodies to each other. They learn to communicate what they want very specifically so that the partner can actually, do that. And then level 3 is when we start to weave in genital contact. And level 3 is called female stroking. And in that, one partner, who's the woman in the partnership, this definitely requires two people, removes her pants and lies down and butterflies her legs open. And the other partner, whether male or female, stays fully clothed. And we create a time frame, and they create a special place to do this that's not on the bed. And for 20 minutes, the partner who's fully clothed strokes the woman's clitoris in a very specific way. Okay. And it's all about just feeling sensation, letting go of expectations of having a climax or pleasing the person. It's just dropping into the pleasure of receiving and being touched.
Wow, that's so cool.
It's a wow. It's radical. And then level 4 is male stroking. So if I have a gay couple or a heterosexual couple or one is a man, then there's this technique that's taught where the male receives this touch that's really different. It's very present. It's very connected. It's not like a hand job like we think about. And it's pretty mind-blowing for men, especially men who have issues around erectile dysfunction, or maybe they've had prostate issues. It totally opens up a new world for them.
Wow. So
that's level 4. And then,
yeah, go ahead.
And then level 5 is they start to really engage in all kinds of sexual practices, oral for your pleasure, for my pleasure. I mean, penetration is just one of the things on the menu that's just expanded exponentially.
So what is it that, I'm just curious, like, what your opinion is as to why these types of practices are just not the norm. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, for me personally, it seemed like the more I got into my spirituality, the more that it transferred in that way into my sexuality in similar ways to what you're talking about. But why is it that, I mean, I think I know what the answer is, but I want your opinion. Why is it that there's such a lack of just touch and just human connection and intimacy? I mean, along with the orgasm and all of that too, but just, it seems like there's just, it's such a, like a target-oriented sort of, I don't know, there's just all these weird dynamics that go along with it that sort of throw out a lot of the really beautiful parts of sexuality.
Yeah, well, I think you have sort of touched on a lot of it, and we could spend a whole evening on this. I would say this is just how it's coming to me in this moment. Our culture is terrified of sex. Real, pure, connected, fully body orgasmic sexuality. We've narrowed it down to the male paradigm. Sorry, guys, but the male paradigm, which is foreplay, get excited, build the orgasmic energy, climax, ejaculate, or the female version of that, and I mean specifically that moment of climax when you go over, preferably you go over together, and then you're done. Mm-hmm. That's what our culture glorifies. And women have this whole capacity to experience this movement of this orgasmic energy throughout their bodies, and men have it too. They just, in this culture, we don't cultivate and teach that.
So when you say orgasmic energy, are you talking about the energy that you have access to up even before you go into the orgasmic sort of part?
Totally.
So in other words, it's
like,
there's an orgasmic sort of essence to the whole experience.
yeah, I like to call it orgasmic energy is the energy that flows throughout the body and flows between two people. And I like to call climax that moment when you literally go over and the physiology releases.
Right.
And then there's this sort of drop in energy. When you stay in that orgasmic flow of energy, you can, when you really start to play with it outside of the 20-minute container later on, it's like it builds and it drops and it like plateaus and it's like amazing. And what happens is that afterwards you're suffused with this energy that stays with you. And it
right.
actually, I use this for people who are getting older because it's good for all of us, but because it builds your vitality. And like the Taoists in China have known about this for centuries, and they teach this as a way to expand your longevity.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, it's a wow. And actually, when you climax and go over, you can lose energy. But when you work in this field of orgasmic energy that flows through the body, you build energy.
Wow. So, what about some of the things we've talked about that get in the way of people having a fulfilling sex life? What about just the emotional issues that get unresolved in couples' relationships that then transfer into sort of a, Cold War in bed?
Yeah. I can give you an example of a couple that came to me because there's so many ways to address that. And I would say sexual trauma is a big one, a lot for men and very much for women. So you become intimate with someone and sooner or later that past experience is going to surface and it gets held in the body. So that can cause some difficulty in sexuality. Should I share a little bit about the couple that I...
Yeah. So, I'd like to hear more specifically what you mean by it's held in the body too.
Okay, let me go there. So, if as a younger person, or it doesn't matter, if as a child or even a teenager or whenever, if you're someone who's been sexually violated, like it might be molestation when you're a child, which is pretty rampant.
I hear it's like 20% of girls or 25.
I was molested as a child. And so there's a lot of things that happen there. One is you're with someone, like in my case, who I loved and trusted. And there was a deep connection. There was an attachment. So we're talking about attachment here. There was a deep attachment to my father. And then there was this inappropriate behavior, which was mixed for me because it was pleasurable and painful. And then emotionally it becomes confusing because I love this person and yet something happened that didn't seem right. And you're too young to really understand whether it's right or wrong. And then you carry it. What happens, so there's this physical thing that happens that your body carries. And there's the emotional component, which also is carried. And then you move through your life and maybe you've sort of repressed it or pushed it down. And then you come into an intimate relationship with someone.
Right.
A lover, a partner. And all this comes up again. So your body will literally may respond in the way it did back at that time, which means like shut down.
Yeah.
And then there's all the emotional fears that can come up, which can be surprising if you haven't been in touch with your trauma. I mean, sometimes being in relationship will bring up something that needs to be healed.
Right.
Does that answer your question? I mean, this is a huge field.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the thing that came to mind for me to ask that question was, to me, the health of my sexual connection with my partner is directly related to the health of our emotional and spiritual connection. And so if there's things that I'm bugged about that I'm too afraid to talk about, it's, that's going to get in the way sexually, or if there's resentments that I have or that she has, or
Right.
so it seems like, I mean, like you hear a lot about when people have affairs, the affair is just a symptom of the deeper issue of the sort
Yeah.
of rupture in the attachment with
Yeah.
the couple or something.
So let's speak to that, because that's a whole different entry point, because there's molestation and there's rape and there's trauma that one partner may bring to the relationship.
Right.
But let's say it's a situation like this where, how did you say it? You have two people who, say it again, there was just one really pithy.
Yeah.
Like maybe one has a resentment and they withhold, and then there's less
Yeah.
communication, and
Yeah.
then the
Yeah.
sex starts to like pull back.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So here's something that's really cool. I see a lot of people who are in therapy, because I'm not a therapist, I'm a coach. So they're working with a therapist, and the therapist is helping them bridge, reconnect. And maybe there's been betrayal in the relationship.
Right.
So the therapist is helping them reconnect, but they're talking about it. They're sitting on a couch talking
Right.
about it with their therapist. So often the therapist will refer the couple to me, and I sit them down and I have them start reconnecting physically using this practice.
Wow.
So instead of processing, which they'll do with the therapist, they
They're
actually
experiencing.
start.
Yeah.
Yes. And oftentimes this betrayal has happened at the level of sexuality. Like maybe one of the partners has gone and had sex with someone else, or,
Right.
So I just get them to reconnect physically with clear communication and
Right.
take the processing out of it. And that happens in my office, and then they do the other work with the therapist. And
Wow.
that's amazing, because sometimes you can talk your way in and out of everything.
Right. Oh, well, I mean, talking language is just an abstraction anyway. I mean, the reality of
And
life.
it's important, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the reality of life is the feeling and the immediate felt sense of experience. So, yeah.
And I say this a lot to clients. If you've experienced any kind of physical trauma
Yeah.
around your sexuality, and that's every woman pretty much on the planet,
Right.
the way to start to heal that is at the level of physical contact.
Yes.
Like you do the healing at the level in which the harm was created, happened. So you go back and
Right.
you heal on that level using safety and containment and communication, and like it's amazing.
So like what if you had a lesbian couple where maybe one of the partners was really still struggling with a lot of shame about being a lesbian and not really wanting to talk about it and coming out to their family, but I mean, do you work with couples like that? If it's,
Yeah.
getting in the way of their sexual connection, or even if it's not, you're a coach, so you can do it whether they have a sexual issue or not, right?
Yeah. I mean, even with a couple like that, where one is more, shall we say, closeted,
Mm-hmm.
I focus on the connection between the two women. And what can we do to deepen and enhance the connection and create a sense of safety
Right. Right.
and holding? And then when that happens, it's almost like the one who's afraid to come out and maybe the other who wants her to come out, it kind of like levels out.
Right.
Like the one who wants it sort of, there's just what happens is there's this sense of unconditional love and acceptance that starts to pour into the relationship. And then that situation starts to kind of sort itself out.
Awesome. So
I
then,
don't always focus on the problem, shall we say. I focus
Right.
on the connection.
oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. Because I've done some really cool trainings about how when we focus on solving a problem versus creating what we want, it's, I think you know where I'm going with that. Anyway,
But that is so important, Mary,
yeah,
because
Yeah.
a lot of modalities focus on fixing or solving the problem. And what I think, and what I hear you say, is maybe there's no problem here.
Right.
Maybe there's just a need for deeper understanding and connection.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So,
Yeah.
what about like religion and culture and how it impacts our experience of our own sexuality?
Mm.
How do you how do you help? I mean, I would imagine part of your work is just helping people decondition from. I mean, there's so much like objectification of women still in our culture, and
Mhm.
violence toward women, and there's so many expectations culturally for women to look beautiful and young and sexy, and it's like
I keep rolling my eyes. Yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. Um,
how do you help people work
what,
through this stuff?
well, one of the things I do, one of the, as you mentioned in the beginning, there are a lot of things I do along with this. And I use this process called human design, and I'm just going to mention it here, but I'm mentioning it because of the conditioning thing. Um, all of us are
Mm-hmm.
conditioned from the moment that we're born by our caregivers, our peers, our teachers, our school, our culture, our religion, our whatever. It's just it's constant. And one of the pieces of work I do with my clients is help them identify who they really truly are at their core.
Right.
Who like their authentic essential being. And what we have to do is start to remove all those layers of conditioning, which
Yes.
are what we call the not self. And this other piece that I often use with my clients is called human design. And they get a literal map, a visual map
Right.
of their genetic blueprint. And they get to see the beauty of who they are and the places where they're more easily conditioned, because everybody's got their more vulnerable places. And
Yes.
it kind of normalizes and helps people understand that all these holdbacks we have aren't who we are.
Yes.
It's not who we
Absolutely.
are.
I totally agree. You know
So,
what? Oh, sorry.
no, go.
I wanted to make sure that everybody that's viewing is welcome to ask questions or like us or whatever you would like. So I didn't know if I really went over that too much. So anyway, keep going.
Well, I think that's it. I think deconditioning is huge. And the practice is one way to do it because you just cut through to connection and but
The
there are other
practice,
ways that
the sensing
the
practice, the
practice
somatic
the
modalities.
wellness sexuality practice is a somatic way to deal with conditioning and get you back to the essence of who you are, the essence of what you're experiencing moment to moment by moment in your body. And what
Right.
happens when you do that is the mind, which is the part of you that's all full of conditioning, just gets really quiet. Like
Wow.
it's like a meditation. So in the moment that you're doing the practices, conditioning is just being like shed from you. And then the
Wow.
way you're connecting with your partner is also shedding the conditioning. Yeah.
Wow. That's
And
really
there are other
powerful.
tools. Yeah. I mean, it's funny just speaking with you. I'm like, oh, right. This is one of the things that can happen.
So, do you have to be in, when you talk about this work, is this where you have to see clients in person or can you do it remotely or how does it work?
I see clients all over the US. I've even seen some in the UK. And we can meet in person and we can meet over the phone. We can do like video conferencing or Skype. And when I introduce them to the practices, it's nice to have facial for the first few levels that are the PG-13 ones. When we get to genital stroking, if the clients are open, I will actually be there in person to guide them through. And if they're not comfortable with that, I give them
Yeah.
very explicit directions. They do that on their own and they come back and they get feedback and tips and support in developing that. Because what's important, especially when you get to levels 3 and 4, the stroking practices, that you really learn the technique of it,
Yes.
the whole, like the containment, the timing, the rules, the guidelines, so that both partners feel exquisitely safe and met with really exquisite care.
Oh, neat. So, how is
Yeah.
this different or similar to Tantra?
I would say Tantra is sort of more Hindu and spiritual, and there's a lot of beautiful rituals and different aspects and ways to come together and experience Tantra.
Mm-hmm.
This practice is kind of like the Zen version. This is like Zen.
Ooh.
It's simple, it's precise, there's no ritual, there's no fluff, there's no religion to it, there's no spirituality to it, even though when clients do this practice, the connections that happen can feel profoundly spiritual.
Yeah.
But all of that is removed. It's just very, very simplified down. Yeah, it's very Zen.
Well,
you know what I mean by Zen? Like, it's just no frills.
Yeah, Zen, but there's like it's a minimalist kind of vibe, but that like where less is more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Much more. No distraction of all that other stuff.
Yeah.
Just
And you know, I did a show last week about this great book I've read, The Body Keeps the Score, with Bessel van der Kolk, and he talks about how developmental trauma it lives in the body. And these are, I mean, what you're talking about really is the kind of stuff he recommends, because it's body-based somatic mindfulness, where you can really experience, you have the immediate sense of experience versus just being in your head about something. And that's really what life is that's when we're present, when we're like present in our body and present to our feelings versus being in this abstract thought process, you know?
couldn't say it better than that. Why don't we actually do a little practice right now to demonstrate just what you said?
Okay, sure.
So I'm going to invite anyone who's listening to just take, I don't know, 5 minutes.
Sure.
So I'm going to introduce you to level 1, which is totally PG-13. And, you know, Mary, you're sitting with yourself, so you can do this alone.
Okay.
And if you're listening to this call or you listen to this call later and you want to do it with someone, then you just sit next to each other.
Nice.
And we'll just do level 1. Very, very simple.
So you just sit next, like if you're with somebody, you sit next to them, but you don't hold hands or anything.
You sit next to them with about 3 inches distance, so you're not even touching, side by side, say on a couch.
Okay, perfect.
Couch is good. So whether you're sitting side by side with someone or just with yourself, I would invite you, I'm going to do this with eyes open because it's just easier, but I invite you to close your eyes.
Okay.
And just begin to feel your breathing.
Okay.
Like notice, actually, maybe I'll close my eyes too. You just notice where in your body you're feeling some movement as the breath moves in and out. Probably feeling some movement in the chest or the belly. And then as you're noticing the breathing, bring your awareness more to the out breath. And every time you breathe out, can you allow yourself to settle a little more fully into the support underneath your hips, your buttocks, your thighs. So really feel the surface that's underneath your pelvis and your pelvic floor. Yeah. So with each out breath, you're just dropping down and down and down into this pelvic basin where the heaviest bones are and where your genitals are. So you're just relaxing down into your hips. Now, if you're sitting next to someone, you're still sensing yourself, and you begin to just notice and sense the presence of someone sitting next to you. You might actually feel some warmth on that side of your body. You might hear their breathing. So you're being with yourself as you're allowing yourself to sense the being sitting next to you. And then we'll just do one more simple piece. So this is the beginning of like level 1. So then what I invite you to do is to bring your awareness to your, if you're just by yourself, your right hand. And if you're sitting next to your partner, bring your awareness to your hand that's closest to your partner. And then you can bring more consciousness into the hand by just moving your fingers a little bit, stretching your fingers, feeling your palms wake up. And as you move your hand and your palms, you might even start to feel your arms wake up, like light up. You might start to feel more sensation traveling up your arm to your shoulder. And now the next thing I invite you to do is just to gently lift your hand up off whatever it's resting on and let it hover like 2 or 3 inches above your lap. Yeah, just a little bit, even lower than that. Just let it hover and feel the weight of it, the hovering, and then very, 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 very slowly let it come back down to resting. And notice how long it takes for that arm to really land and rest and settle on your lap. And check and see if you're still breathing. And then if you're with your partner, the partner with the shorter hair or the shortest hair at this point is going to lift you're going to lift your arm, and you're going to bring your arm over to hover over your partner's arm. Just hover. And sense the space between your arm and your partner's arm. And feel them. Feel the space, but feel the warmth, the heat. And then very slowly, you're going to allow your arm to just come to resting on your partner's arm. And those of us who are just sitting by ourselves, we can just do this with ourselves. So you allow your arm to rest on your partner's arm, and both of you just feel into the contact. The temperature, texture, sensation, breathing. And then partner who's with the shorter hair just raises their arm up very, very, very slowly. So you break contact and return your arm back to your own lap, and very, very slowly allow it to come back to resting. And then you just feel the effects of this very simple arm movement throughout your body. You know, has your breath changed? Does your arm feel different? Does one shoulder feel different? And can you still feel yourself settling into the support of the chair? And it goes on like that. That's like an example of, so like,
so
you know,
relaxing.
what's that like? Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. I'm like totally like, okay, nice.
Yeah. So
Very
if you
nice.
have thank you. So if you have a couple who just can't even take time to be together, and they're just stressed from life and stressed from the relationship and just whatever, this is mind-blowing.
Right. And I mean, and so many times what I'm finding just with myself and others is that many times the reason people are stuck in whatever struggles, whether it's sex or money or jobs or relationships, it's like they just don't give themselves permission to stop, look, and listen, you know?
Yeah.
And they just keep on that sort of numbing sort of hamster wheel versus going,
Yeah.
wait a minute, do I still want to be signed up for this life?
I mean, there's this culture, especially Western culture, especially the USA, where we value doing. Do.
Yeah.
Hamster cage. Doing, making more, having more, producing more, being more successful. And what happens to the being
Right.
inside of us? Yeah. Who just wants to play, really, and connect and have fun.
Right. Oh my God. Well, yeah, I'm reading so many great books right now. Just like just kind of what's been sort of the underpinning of that whole shift to just the commercialization and how basically the technology out there enables a lot of these large companies to really influence us in consuming their products. And so I think it's really kind of figuring out what really is going on and limiting your exposure to different media so that you're not allowing yourself to be programmed to buy into this kind of value system, you know?
Plus, even our media is promoting itself as connectivity. Like Facebook, you can connect with thousands and thousands of old friends and new friends and make friends, but it's like we're connecting through our freaking phones. So just like, what happened to physical contact, eye to eye, finger to finger, toe to toe, let alone genital contact, or just being together?
Well, if you think about it, it feels like the trend with technology has been, yes, more connected to more people all the time in terms of technology wise, but less connected on a real heart or spirit centered level or emotional level, because there's so many ways to hide out with technology. Like, I mean, that's why my friends know this about me. I'm not like a texter, like where I text little things throughout the day, or I like real time. I mean, the minimum is a phone call, but in person, because to me that's where the juice and the dynamic is. It's not through just like a drive-by text or a drive-by email, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we're still doing technology right now. However, at least we have visual.
Well, this is great.
And we've got this is the next best thing.
Right. Exactly.
To being side by side. Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, yeah.
So, one other thing I wanted to really talk about too, since there's so much body shaming going on in our culture, and I know a lot of women, actually, with some of the Brene Brown work I've done, she talks about how 90% of women have shame about their body. And, you know, if we have shame about something, if we have shame about something, I mean, the thing about shame is it makes you want to hide, you know, because you don't want to feel it. So, good. I hit a nerve for you.
Yes. No,
okay, go with it.
Everything you asked, it's like, we didn't talk about that. So
take it, Linda.
This is so important. Yes, we are so we're so conditioned to not like our bodies, and you know, we live in LA, so it's like so amplified here.
Yeah, it's very.
When you do a somatic based practice and you start to drop in your body, instead of feeling fat, which is not a feeling or a sensation, it's a mindset.
Right.
You start to feel the sense of your belly moving as you breathe. Or when you move into the part of the practice, say, where we're doing genital stroking, women have so much shames about their genitals. Yeah. But when they drop into this practice and they allow themselves to be exquisitely touched by someone whose only interest is stroking for their own pleasure and exploration, what they discover is there is so much sensation available there that they didn't, more than they could have ever imagined. And as the sensation starts to open up, all that stuff about, you know, all those stories they say about their genitals just melt away in this experience of like, whoa.
Yeah.
And then
it's like, you kind of change all the rules about, you know, like, in other words, sex just isn't about, you know, getting to the orgasm. It's really about having this beautiful experience on the way as well.
And when you discover how much potential for sensation you have, which I got to tell you, most of us women have no idea how much we can feel in our bodies, not just in our genitals, but just that clitoris. Oh my God. So when we start to open up the sensation there, yes, it's like you start to really love your body, regardless if it's shape or size or color, or whether it's, you know, even if you have some kind of, you know, physical condition that's an issue, you just start to fall in love with yourself because you're in your body rather than objectifying your body.
Well, it's like they talk about in that Bessel book about you become embodied. I mean, you really feel what it's like to be an embodied person. And Yeah. So I love
And
that.
then you're embodied and you're with this other person who desires to be embodied. And oh
Right.
my God, your appetite for that other body just like is tremendous because there's this new understanding of pleasure, how to
Right.
experience pleasure in yourself and then take pleasure in that other person.
Well, and what I love about what you're talking about is that you're really opening you're creating a container for a new way to look at sexuality and connection between people versus the old sort of rules, and just saying throw those out. Let's look at this. I mean, what do we really want? And I mean, most people want the same thing. They want a sense of connection, a feeling of loving someone else and feeling loved,
Yeah.
and feeling like you have that primary attachment that's your family, your partner, your spouse, and so whatever we can do to increase that, and the other thing I love about what you do too is, let's see here, we've got about maybe 3 or 4 more minutes. Well, just to make sure everybody really gets it. So your main focus with the creating the wellness sexuality practice is doing the 5 levels of somatic mindfulness, right? And then
Well, mindfulness, yeah, the 5 levels
and then like basically helping couples, or you don't even have to be in a couple to work with you,
exactly.
obviously. In fact, we didn't really talk about that. A lot of people have shame around solo sex or masturbation, and so I would imagine you have a whole support philosophy
Yes.
and system around
Yes.
it.
I
Anything you
work
want to
with
share?
single women or men, and I
Hmm.
take them through steps and I modify the practice so they can do all this sexual sexploration with themselves and really wake themselves up. This is great for single people who are like a little timid about dating. So they
Yeah.
really start to tap into their own sexual potential, the energy
Right.
that moves through their body. So they have more confidence and more sense of what feels good to them and what kind of touch they like. And just they can bring a lot more to the table when they're ready to enter into a relationship.
Well,
Or just,
which
yeah,
is it's so cool that you have this because I've met a lot of as a lesbian, I've met a lot of women in the past 5 years that are the women that have come out late in life. Maybe they're in their 40s or 50s or even 60s, and they don't. I mean, they were socialized as heterosexual women, and they're not really sure how to navigate the lesbian world. And I would imagine just even having someone like you to support them and just what to expect, what's involved. Instead of having to reinvent the wheel, they could learn from
yeah.
somebody that knows what that's about.
Well, it's really sweet if you have a woman who's just like entering into her first woman-to-woman relationship because there's this sense of newness. Like it's all
Yeah,
exploration. You don't know what to do. And actually, I encourage the people I work with to go to that beginner's mind of like,
yeah,
I don't know, let's find out. So
yes,
curiosity, exploration, not knowing are the keys to having
right.
more fun. And you can't do it wrong.
I love
So I
that. And
really,
that's the other thing
yeah,
I love about your philosophy too is it's like you bring a sense of fun, playfulness, eroticism, like no shame, no guilt, no judgment. It's like just be yourself, have fun. This is supposed to feel good, and you get to make it up with your partner or with yourself.
totally.
It's like I
Or with
love it.
yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
you can do a lot of fun things by yourself.
So how can people work with you, Linda?
So do you want like website or just
Either
say what
both.
we do or well,
Yeah.
first of all, you can contact me at Linda at Ignite IGNITE your YOURJOY.us, and I'm sure you'll be giving them that link. You can go to my website, and when people come to see me, I offer like a complimentary initial coaching session. You can come as a single person or you can come with a partner, and we just sit down. We spend about 45 minutes seeing what's up, what's needed, and
Hmm.
find out if we're a good fit
Right.
and if
That's
it's going
great.
to feel really good to work together. And then if a client or clients decide to work with me, you actually make a commitment to yourself to commit to a certain period of time. Because when you start to work with someone like this, as you know, and the work starts to get deep and interesting, sometimes you'll reach this point where you want to bail. And it's like, no, you make a commitment to stay for the good stuff and the difficult stuff so you can come out the other side.
Oh, that's
so
so
I work
important.
with people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in person, over the phone, Skype, FaceTime.
Awesome.
And I also work with groups, but mostly what we're talking about tonight is individuals or partners.
Awesome. And your whole background, I mean, you've got a background in the heterosexual world, the bisexual world, the lesbian world.
Everything.
Everything.
I was a lesbian for 20 years, and now I consider myself bi. So I've been in all sorts of,
Yeah. So that's what's great about you is you have so many different backgrounds that people can feel safe with.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, I hate to have to say goodbye, but we're only about 7 minutes till the top of the hour here. There's one last question I always like to ask my guests, though, and that is, what's the one message that you have the most passion about you want to leave with our viewers tonight?
Oh, I can feel that in my genitals as you ask. So, I mean, that's kind of it right there. We all have the capacity to be turned on and exuberant and vitalized, especially as we get older. There's just no doubt. I mean, my sexual energy is more potent than it's ever been.
Yes.
So it's all available to us, and it's just life force energy that surges through us. So we all have access to this, and we're here to enjoy it and play. Yeah.
I love that. Well, Linda, this has been such a pleasure, and I'm sure if you're open to it, I'd love to have you back on the show. You've got so many other things we could talk about too. And yes, definitely. And your website is igniteyourjoy.us. Igniteyourjoy.us. Yes, go to Linda's website. All right, Linda, thank you so much. And we will, I'm sure, reconnect very soon. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Mary. It was a pleasure.
All right. Wow, that was great, Linda. Wow, it's so neat to have somebody talking about sex in a loving and sort of holistic and spiritual way, and that we can make it fun and playful and curious, and it's so neat. So thank you, Linda. That was great. Okay, couple of announcements, and then we're going to wrap up. I always do a coaching tip since I am a life coach, and since tonight's topic was about creating a wellness sexuality practice, I thought just what one tip I would like to give everyone is just to give yourself 3 or 4 minutes, at the minimum, to find a quiet place and just do that first exercise Linda talked about, which is just really sensing into your body and really giving yourself a few minutes just to feel what it feels like, to feel yourself sitting in the chair, your butt on the chair, or your feet on the ground, or your arms on the armrests, and your heart beating, and we just don't give ourselves a lot of time to do that. And that presence of that's what really brings you present into your body, is just feeling your body as you're in it. And just give yourself the opportunity to do that, and you will notice that you will start noticing you're more present in other ways too. So that's my coaching tip for the week. The other thing is I have 2 kinds of coaching I do. I am a live stream and live webinar coach and consultant. So if you are a coach or any type of helping professional, or anybody that really wants to really utilize this live streaming technology, or would like to have a webinar through Zoom, any of those types of things, I can help you. And you don't even have to come and visit me in my office in Southern California, because I can do it remotely, and I don't even have to be in the picture. I can actually run your production remotely. So if you're wanting to reach an audience all over the world, but you don't feel like you have the skills or want to learn them, and you don't have the equipment, not to worry, I am here. Just go right up to my website, marygiuliani.net, and go to the streaming and webinar services. And then my other kind of coaching is for women that are in midlife that are ready to live their soul's purpose, that are at a place where they're feeling like the window of time is closing in on them, and they are not willing to let that happen. And so they, like me, are at a point where they realize that if it's going to happen, they're going to need to hire someone to help them. And when I did that for myself is when this whole thing took off. And now I have been living my passion for quite some time now and love helping other women do the same. So if you're a woman and you're ready to go for it, please go up to my website and go to the coaching tab. And I do a 30-minute strategy session, whether it's this kind of coaching or the live stream coaching. So with that, I'd love to have you there. And one last thing, which is what I say well, actually, I want to mention I do have a wonderful guest next week who, her name is Kim Shepard. And basically, it's all about the lessons she's learned from being a former multi-million-dollar CEO to really looking at midlife and reinventing herself. And so Kim is amazing story of a woman who has been a CEO, now is the chairwoman of her former company, and is looking at, okay, so I did that, check that off the list. Now what is it that I really want to do? So she's going to help us all do that pivot at midlife. So with that, I hope you all have a great week, and just think of one thing you can do to be true to yourself and put it on your calendar and do it tomorrow, because that's how your life's going to transform. Have a great week, everyone.